The final battle loomed on the horizon. The alien coalition, enraged by their earlier defeat, had concentrated their forces on the fortress planet of Nexara Prime, a heavily fortified world at the heart of human space. Its defenses were legendary: orbital shields, energy cannons, and fleets designed to crush any invader. Humanity knew that assaulting Nexara Prime directly would be suicidal without careful strategy. The humans had one advantage: the lessons of the Deathworlders. They had trained for months in survival, adaptability, and unconventional combat. They knew the enemy underestimated them, believing humans were weak, soft, and unprepared. That assumption would be their downfall. Admiral Cardin and Commander Nguyen coordinated the attack. Strike teams would infiltrate the planet using asteroid cover and stealth technology. Hybrid human Deathworlder forces would disable orbital defenses, while human engineers hacked energy grids to create vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, planetary forces prepared to engage in guerrilla warfare, drawing enemy troops into traps and ambushes. The first phase of the assault began with precision. Human ships, adapted with Deathworlder technology, darted through asteroid fields, avoiding detection while launching surprise attacks on orbital cannons. Engineers aboard the ships manipulated enemy systems, causing confusion and chaos. Every move was deliberate, every action a test of skill learned during months of training. On the surface, hybrid teams moved through dense forests, jagged cliffs, and abandoned cities. They used camouflage, misdirection, and knowledge of the terrain to avoid enemy patrols while setting traps. Soldiers and Deathworlders worked in seamless coordination, combining instinct and strategy. Humans were learning to think like predators, and their enemies were beginning to pay the price. Sergeant Kieran Solis led a crucial strike team to disable the planetary shield generator. The mission was dangerous, heavily guarded with environmental hazards designed to kill intruders. Using lessons from the Obsidian Wilds, the team navigated lava vents, collapsing terrain, and hidden traps. Every human's adaptability and ingenuity was tested, and for the first time they relied fully on the Deathworlders' guidance. "Move as one," Solis whispered. "Adapt to what we see. Use every tool, every lesson we've learned. We survive together, or not at all." The team reached the shield generator, rigged it with controlled explosives, and signaled for extraction. Moments later, a massive explosion disabled the generator, leaving Nexara Prime vulnerable to orbital strikes. Meanwhile, on the front lines, human soldiers and Deathworlders engaged enemy troops in brutal, precise skirmishes. The enemy had expected predictable human behavior. Instead, they faced unpredictability, creativity, and relentless courage. Ambushes, traps, and coordinated attacks decimated their forces. Humans were no longer the prey, they were predators. Admiral Cardin led the orbital assault personally. The Resolute coordinated energy strikes on key installations while directing human Deathworlder teams to exploit weaknesses. Every attack, every maneuver, reflected the lessons of months under the Deathworlders' tutelage. Humanity had become a force that even the alien coalition could not anticipate. After days of relentless fighting, the final confrontation occurred at Nexara Prime's central citadel. The alien coalition had gathered their remaining forces, expecting to crush the human invaders. But humans and Deathworlders fought as one, combining strength, strategy, and innovation. Soldiers used environmental hazards to their advantage, engineers sabotaged critical systems, and Deathworlders led charges that shattered enemy formations. Sergeant Solis's team breached the citadel, encountering fierce resistance. Every step was a struggle, every move a test of skill and courage. Yet human adaptability shone. Improvised weapons, quick thinking, and teamwork overcame the enemy's technological advantage. Explosions rocked the corridors, alarms blared, and chaos reigned. But the humans pressed forward, unyielding. Finally, the alien coalition's command center was breached. The leaders attempted to escape, but hybrid human Deathworlder teams anticipated every move. The coalition's forces were scattered, disorganized, and defeated. Nexara Prime was secured. Humanity had won, not through overwhelming power alone, but through intelligence, courage, and the ability to adapt under pressure. As the battle ended, the Deathworlders gathered their forces. Their glowing eyes scanned the humans, and for the first time, a clear sense of approval was communicated. They had tested, observed, and trained humanity, and now they recognize them as equals in resilience, courage, and strategy. Admiral Carden addressed the human and Deathworlder forces. Today, humanity has proven that we are not just survivors. We are warriors, thinkers, and allies. We fought alongside the galaxy's deadliest beings and emerged victorious. Let this victory remind us: courage, ingenuity, and determination can overcome any challenge. The Deathworlders did not linger. Their mission complete, they departed, leaving humanity stronger, wiser, and ready for the challenges of the galaxy. Humanity had learned that allies respect strength, adaptability, and courage, and that even the deadliest creatures could be teachers. As Aurora Prime's skies cleared, humans looked to the stars with renewed hope. They had asked the stars for aid. The Deathworlders had responded. Humanity had survived, learned, and thrived. The galaxy was vast, dangerous, and unknown, but humanity was ready. And as the stars shone above, a new chapter in human history began, one of courage, resilience, and the unyielding determination to endure and to rise. The horizon of Aurora Prime glowed with the approaching fleet of the alien coalition. From orbit, their ships stretched like a black storm across the stars, engines burning with a cold, deadly light. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for months, training under the guidance of the Deathworlders, learning strategies, techniques, and tactics no human had ever imagined. The time for training had ended. Now survival and victory depended on execution. Admiral Rhea Carden stood on the bridge of the flagship Resolute, her eyes scanning the incoming threat. "They outnumber us," she said, "but we have something they do not: adaptation, ingenuity, and the skills the Deathworlders have taught us. Remember everything you've learned. Today, we fight for humanity." Commander Tal Yanguyen coordinated the strike teams, blending human soldiers with the Deathworlders' warriors. Each team had a mission: sabotage key enemy ships, protect civilian transports, or draw the enemy into ambushes designed by human ingenuity and Deathworlder strategy combined. The first contact came swiftly. Alien ships moved with precision, firing energy weapons that sliced through human defenses. Yet the humans were ready. Strike teams launched from the Resolute in sleek hybrid crafts, part human engineering, part Deathworlder adaptation. Using terrain in space, asteroid belts, and orbital debris, they ambushed the enemy. Explosions lit the darkness, and humans fought with courage and cunning. Sergeant Kieran Solis led a boarding team onto one of the enemy ships. Using lessons learned in the Obsidian Wilds, the team anticipated traps and environmental hazards. They disabled weapons, rerouted power, and created chaos among the enemy crew. The Deathworlders beside them moved with lethal grace, a combination of brute force and tactical intelligence. Together, humans and Deathworlders formed a synergy no enemy could have expected. Meanwhile, human engineers applied the Deathworlders' techniques to modify ships on the fly. Shields were reinforced, energy weapons recalibrated, and engines adapted to sudden maneuvers. In the chaos of battle, humans were improvising like never before, using creativity where raw power had failed. On the surface of Aurora Prime, defensive teams engaged in guerrilla tactics. Using knowledge gained from the Crimson Wastes and Obsidian Wilds, humans laid traps, set ambushes, and drew enemy forces into lethal zones. Lava traps, hidden energy mines, and environmental hazards turned the battlefield into a proving ground for the lessons they had learned. Even with all preparation, the battle was brutal. Ships were destroyed, soldiers fell, and the sky over Aurora Prime became a canvas of fire and smoke. But every human who survived carried with them lessons from the Deathworlders: patience, observation, adaptability, and the will to endure. Dr. Elliot Varn monitored the fight from the command center. "Look at them," he said. "They're not just surviving, they're outthinking the enemy. They are learning faster than anything in the galaxy. This is humanity's greatest advantage." One critical engagement occurred near the Shattered Moons, where a human Deathworlder strike team used the moons themselves as cover. Alien ships entered a narrow corridor, only to find themselves trapped by gravitational manipulations and human-engineered energy nets. Explosions rocked the void as the enemy fleet faltered, showing that ingenuity and courage could match advanced technology. Sergeant Solis's team returned from the boarding mission, exhausted but triumphant. "They expected humans to panic," Solis said, wiping sweat and grime from his face. They didn't expect us to adapt, to improvise, to fight as one. That's our strength. That's what they can't understand. As the battle raged on, the humans began to turn the tide. Alien ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. Civilian transports reached safety, and Aurora Prime's defenses held. The Deathworlders' approval was clear, though silent. Their resonating sounds, once terrifying, now felt like acknowledgement. Humanity had not only survived its first real battle, but had shown it could fight with strategy, creativity, and courage. But victory came at a cost. Human lives were lost, cities damaged, and resources stretched thin. Every soldier, engineer, and scientist who had survived knew that the war was far from over. The alien coalition would regroup. They would strike again. Yet humanity had proven itself. They were no longer prey. They were warriors, capable of facing the galaxy's deadliest threats head-on. Admiral Carden addressed her fleet after the battle. Today we have survived. We have proven that humanity can adapt, endure, and fight back. Tomorrow we push further. We take the fight to those who threaten our worlds. Humanity will not bow. Humanity will fight, and humanity will endure. As the stars glimmered over the aftermath of battle, the humans of Aurora Prime realized something extraordinary. They had faced an enemy that had once seemed unbeatable and survived. They had learned from the galaxy's deadliest warriors, and now they could face any challenge with skill, courage, and unity. Humanity had stepped onto the war front, and they were ready to claim victory. The first trials had changed humanity. Soldiers who had once doubted themselves now moved with precision through hazardous terrain. Engineers thought like predators, predicting dangers before they struck. Scientists approached challenges with a mix of logic and intuition that even the Deathworlders found remarkable. Humanity was learning, fast, painfully, and thoroughly. On Aurora Prime, the second set of trials began. The Deathworlders had selected a new testing ground, the Obsidian Wilds, a volcanic region filled with rivers of molten rock, jagged cliffs, and thick clouds of poisonous gas. No human had ever survived here without specialized equipment, and even the most advanced human technology was being put to the ultimate test. Admiral Rhea Carden stood on the observation deck, overlooking the region. The heat from the volcanic vents made the air shimmer. "This will teach them more than endurance," she said. "It will teach them strategy, observation, and adaptability. If they survive this, they will be ready for the war ahead." Commander Talia Nguyen, standing beside her, nodded. "The alien coalition is moving faster than we hoped. Every lesson they learn here could mean the difference between survival and annihilation for the colonies beyond." The humans entered the Obsidian Wilds in small groups, each accompanied by a Deathworlder guide. Unlike the desert trials, these challenges were less predictable. Lava flows could change direction without warning. Toxic gases pooled in depressions, and the terrain itself seemed alive with danger. Human teams had to navigate using both instinct and intelligence, observing the environment, predicting hazards, and making split-second decisions. Sergeant Kieran Solis led his team along a narrow ridge that overlooked a river of molten lava. "Keep your focus," he said. "Every misstep, even a small one, could cost us our lives. Move slowly, watch the terrain, and trust each other." The Deathworlders watched from nearby cliffs, silent and imposing. Occasionally, one would provide a hint or gesture, but the humans had to interpret the guidance themselves. The aliens' lessons were never direct. They demanded that humans think, adapt, and act independently. One group encountered a sudden lava surge that cut off their path. Panic flared among the human soldiers. Sergeant Solis raised his hand. "Stop, think, there's always a way. Look for it." Minutes passed, tense and silent. Then one of the engineers, a young woman named Mira Callan, noticed a narrow ledge partially covered by cooled rock. "Here," she shouted. "We can jump across in pairs, use ropes to help each other." The team worked together, combining human ingenuity with physical skill. They crossed the ledge, narrowly avoiding the molten river below. When they reached safety, the Deathworlder guide let out a low, resonant sound, a signal of approval. It was the first time the humans heard what could be described as pride from the alien warriors. Other groups faced similar trials, each one designed to challenge a different aspect of human skill. One team navigated a maze of toxic gas vents, learning to read subtle changes in wind direction and temperature to avoid lethal exposure. Another team scaled jagged cliffs using minimal equipment, and relying on precise timing and cooperation to avoid deadly falls. The humans began to realize that the Deathworlders valued more than brute strength. They respected observation, adaptability, and the ability to learn quickly. Humans had skills the Deathworlders found unusual: teamwork, creativity, and a willingness to think beyond instinct. Slowly, a mutual respect was forming between the two species. Dr. Elliot Varn monitored the trials from a remote lab, fascinated by what he observed. Humans are learning to think like predators but with human creativity, he said to Admiral Carden. They're developing a combination of intelligence, courage, and resilience that the Deathworlders rarely see. This could be humanity's greatest strength. The trials were not without danger. One human, a young soldier named Jace Rourke, fell during a cliff ascent and was nearly swept into a lava river. Quick thinking from his team and the guidance of the Deathworlder saved him, but it was a stark reminder that failure had consequences. Survival required focus, adaptability, and courage in the face of fear. As the days turned into weeks, the humans adapted. They began to anticipate environmental hazards before they occurred. They devised new strategies for navigating unstable terrain, discovered unconventional ways to use their equipment, and started to think ahead in ways the Deathworlders subtly encouraged. Even the Deathworlders, stoic and imposing as they were, began to recognize the humans' growing capabilities. One evening, after a particularly challenging exercise, a Deathworlder approached Sergeant Solis's team. Its glowing eyes scanned them carefully. Then it extended a clawed hand, not in attack, but as a gesture of acknowledgement. Solis hesitated, then shook it firmly. The Deathworlder made a low, vibrating sound in response, and for the first time, humans understood it as approval. "This is more than training," Mira Callan whispered to Solis later. "Exhausted, but exhilarated. They're teaching us how to survive in ways we've never imagined." "We're becoming stronger, smarter, better," Solis nodded. "Yes, and when the alien coalition reaches our colonies, we'll be ready. Not just to survive, but to fight back." Meanwhile, back at the council hall, Admiral Carden and Commander Nguyen reviewed reports from the front lines. "Every lesson learned here increases our chances," Carden said. "Every human who survives these trials becomes a leader, a strategist, a survivor. This is how we turn the tide." Nguyen looked at the holographic map of the outer colonies. "Time is short. Every day counts. If humanity can master what the Deathworlders are teaching, we might not just defend our worlds, we might reclaim lost ground." One evening, as the twin suns of Aurora Prime set over the volcanic region, the Deathworlders gathered the human teams for a final lesson. They led the humans to a plateau overlooking a chasm filled with shifting lava streams. Here the challenge was not just survival but decision-making under pressure. "You will face choices," one Deathworlder communicated through a resonating sound. "Every decision matters. Every hesitation can cost life. Observe, adapt, act." The humans were presented with multiple paths, each fraught with danger. Some paths were blocked by molten lava, others by falling rocks or sudden gas eruptions. The humans had to decide quickly which paths to take, coordinating as teams and using all the skills they had learned. Sergeant Solis's team moved deliberately, analyzing every detail. They split into smaller units covering each other's weaknesses and constantly reassessing their progress. Mira Callan used her knowledge of heat patterns to predict the movement of lava flows. Jace Rourke applied techniques learned in earlier trials to navigate unstable ground. The Deathworlders observed silently, their glowing eyes tracking every movement. When the team reached the opposite side of the chasm safely, the lead Deathworlder let out a prolonged, resonant sound. It was unmistakably a sign of respect. Humans had survived, adapted, and outsmarted a scenario designed to test the limits of their endurance and intelligence. Back at Aurora Prime, the success of the trials spread throughout the colonies. Humans who had once doubted their chances of survival were inspired. Soldiers, engineers, and scientists shared stories of courage, quick thinking, and teamwork. The Deathworlders' lessons had not only trained a few, they had begun to change the entire human outlook. Admiral Carden addressed the council. "Humanity is learning to survive like nothing else in the galaxy. The Deathworlders are harsh, but their lessons are preparing us for the war to come. We are stronger, smarter, and ready to face challenges no one thought we could handle." Commander Nguyen added, "And they're teaching us more than survival. They're teaching us strategy, coordination and respect for both the universe and ourselves. The enemy will underestimate us, and that will be our advantage. The humans themselves felt the change. Confidence replaced fear, ingenuity replaced hesitation, and in the deepest corners of their minds, a quiet but growing belief emerged that humanity could not only survive but thrive against threats that had seemed insurmountable. As the humans prepared for the next phase of the Deathworlders' trials, they also prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the alien coalition. The skills they had learned, adaptability, observation, teamwork, courage, would soon be tested on the battlefield. And for the first time, humanity believed it could emerge victorious. The Obsidian Wilds had become more than a testing ground. It was a crucible, shaping humans into warriors capable of surviving and fighting in a universe that had once seemed overwhelmingly hostile. Every human who endured the trials carried with them the lessons of the Deathworlders: to observe, to adapt, to endure, and to act decisively. By the end of Part 3, humanity had not only survived, they had begun to thrive. They were no longer merely a species struggling to survive on the edges of the galaxy. They were becoming warriors, thinkers, and survivors, ready to face whatever challenges the universe would throw at them. The Deathworlders had taught humanity that survival was not enough. Strength, intelligence, and courage must be combined. And with these lessons, humans were preparing for the battles that would determine the fate of countless worlds. Aurora Prime, once a quiet colony on the fringe of human space, had become a forge of strength and resilience. Humanity was learning, growing, and preparing, and the galaxy had begun to take notice. The Deathworlders had arrived on Aurora Prime with an intensity that no human could have imagined. Their massive ships had torn through the atmosphere, scattering clouds of dust and debris across the cities. For a moment, the humans thought the planet itself had been struck by a catastrophe, but as the smoke cleared, the enormity of what had come became visible. Towering alien warriors, armored in living carapaces that shimmered with strange colors, their eyes glowing with a quiet, calculating light. Admiral Rhea Carden stood at the front of the Council Command Hall, her eyes scanning the alien arrivals. Soldiers lined the streets, rifles ready, but no one dared move closer than necessary. Every instinct in humanity screamed caution, yet every mind recognized a spark of hope. These creatures, legendary, feared, almost mythical, had responded to humanity's call. Whether as saviors or as judges, they were here. The lead Deathworlder, larger than the rest and moving with deliberate precision, approached. Its voice resonated in the minds of all who listened, deep and echoing, almost like thunder in a hollow canyon. "Humans," it said, "your call has reached beyond the stars. You have asked for aid. Aid is not given freely. Strength must be shown. Only the worthy shall survive." The council exchanged tense glances. Commander Talia Nguyen stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of respect. "We understand. Whatever you ask, we will do to prove ourselves. We are ready to face your trials." The Deathworlder considered her words for a moment, its glowing eyes scanning the assembly. Then, without another word, it motioned to its companions. They began to move, selecting teams of humans to guide through the first trial. The soldiers, engineers, and scientists chosen were the bravest available, and even they trembled at the thought of what awaited them. The first trial was a test of endurance and survival. The Deathworlders led the humans to the Crimson Wastes, a vast desert that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Its sands burned like coals under the twin suns, and sudden windstorms could strip flesh from bone in minutes. Humans were issued specialized gear, but the Deathworlders made it clear that survival depended not on equipment alone. It depended on cunning, courage, and adaptability. The humans set out in small groups, each led by a Deathworlder. From the very beginning, the challenge was brutal. The desert shifted and changed with sinkholes, sudden geysers of boiling water, and swarms of native predators. Every team had to navigate without leaving traces, find food and water in a barren land, and endure the scorching heat and freezing nights. Sergeant Kieran Solis, a veteran of frontier skirmishes, led his group with steady determination. "Remember," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "this is about more than surviving the desert. It's about showing that humans can think, adapt, and endure anything. We've faced impossible odds before. This is just another test." His team moved cautiously, avoiding the deadly native creatures and navigating through sudden sandstorms. Every step required careful planning, teamwork, and courage. The Deathworlders watched silently, occasionally offering guidance that was cryptic but vital. "The sand hides weakness," one said. "The heat reveals truth." Other teams struggled. Panic struck some members as exhaustion and fear mounted. The Deathworlders did not intervene unless absolutely necessary. They expected the humans to find solutions, to adapt, to survive through ingenuity and determination. As the days passed, the humans began to learn the Deathworlders' lessons. They discovered ways to extract water from desert plants previously thought useless. They built temporary shelters that could withstand the shifting sands. They used the native creatures' behavior to their advantage, predicting storms and avoiding deadly encounters. Every success built confidence and earned the Deathworlders' quiet approval. Meanwhile, on Aurora Prime, the Council monitored the trials with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The alien coalition continued its march through human space, and reports from the front lines were grim. Yet here humans were learning skills and strategies that could turn the tide of the war. Humanity's ingenuity and courage were being sharpened under the guidance of the deadliest creatures they had ever encountered. In the evenings, when the trials paused, humans and Deathworlders would gather around fire pits or glowing energy sources. Communication was still difficult. Deathworlders did not speak like humans, but gestures, demonstrations, and the shared struggle created bonds of understanding. The humans began to appreciate the alien warriors' strength and resilience. The Deathworlders, in turn, showed a strange fascination with human creativity, teamwork, and the courage to keep going even in the face of overwhelming danger. Dr. Elliot Varn, observing from a safe distance, commented, "They are teaching more than survival. They are teaching strategy, observation, and patience. Humanity is learning from the galaxy's greatest survivors. This could change everything." As the desert trials continued, small victories inspired humanity. One group managed to outsmart a pack of native predators, luring them into a trap that caused minimal risk to the humans. Another team constructed a heat-resistant shelter that allowed them to rest while conserving energy and water. Each achievement was quietly noted by the Deathworlders, who began to show subtle signs of respect. A nod of the head, a brief pause in movement, a rare approving sound. Not every human succeeded, however. Some were eliminated from the trials, not through punishment but because they failed to adapt quickly enough. Their survival depended on creativity and courage, and the Deathworlders had no patience for weakness. Each loss was a stark reminder of the harshness of the galaxy and the severity of the challenges humanity would face in the coming war. Despite the harshness, the humans persevered. They began to adopt the Deathworlders' mentality, to see the universe as a place of constant challenge where only strength, intelligence, and adaptability guaranteed survival. Soldiers and engineers returned from the trials tougher, more resourceful, and more confident. The citizens of Aurora Prime watched in awe as their friends and family endured what had seemed impossible. Commander Nguyen observed a team navigating a massive canyon filled with sudden energy storms. The humans were tense but determined, using every tool and trick they had learned. When they finally reached the other side, exhausted but alive, the Deathworlders gave their first true sign of approval. A low, resonant sound, vibrating in the minds of the humans like a heartbeat. It was a moment of recognition, an acknowledgement that humans had endured, adapted, and survived. Back at the council hall, Admiral Carden allowed herself a rare smile. Humanity was being tested in ways no one could have imagined. They were learning to survive under pressure, to think like predators, and to work together like never before. The Deathworlders had not come to coddle or save them. They had come to teach. And in that teaching lay the hope of humanity's future. But even as the trials progressed, the shadow of the alien coalition loomed. Reports continued to arrive. Colonies destroyed, fleets scattered, civilians in peril. Time was short, and humanity had only just begun to earn the respect of their alien allies. The next trials promised to be even more difficult, preparing humans not just for survival, but for battle against a foe that had already shown no mercy. The Deathworlders' final message for the day was clear. Strength alone is not enough. Adapt, endure, and prove you can fight for more than yourself. Only then will aid be given. Humanity was beginning to understand the lesson. Courage, ingenuity, and determination would define their place in the galaxy, They were learning not only to survive, but to thrive in conditions that had seemed impossible. They were learning the ways of the Deathworlders, and in doing so, they were becoming something greater than they had ever been. Aurora Prime was no longer just a remote colony on the edge of space. It was a proving ground. Humanity's mettle was being tested, and the universe was watching. Each step taken in the harsh deserts, each strategy learned under alien guidance was forging a stronger, more capable species. By the end of the first month, the humans who survived the trials were not the same as those who had begun them. They were faster, sharper, and more resilient. They could navigate hostile terrain, anticipate danger, and act with precision. The Deathworlders had begun to recognize them not as prey, not as weaklings, but as warriors worthy of respect. And as the twin suns set over the crimson wastes, Admiral Carden gazed toward the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning. The alien coalition was still coming. The outer colonies still needed help. But humanity was learning, growing, and preparing. They would not simply survive, they would fight. And when the time came, they would show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. For the first time in many weeks, a sense of hope spread across Aurora Prime. Humanity had called the stars for aid, and the deadliest beings in the galaxy had answered. The trials would be harsh, the lessons severe, and the challenges terrifying. But humanity would endure, adapt, and prove itself. The stars were watching, and humanity was ready to rise. The stars stretched endlessly above Aurora Prime, a cold blue world on the very edge of human space. Its surface was dotted with colonies, research stations, and mining outposts. For centuries, humans had spread across the galaxy, claiming new worlds and learning to survive in environments that would have killed their ancestors on Earth. But now, humanity faced a threat unlike any it had ever known. The alien coalition, an advanced and merciless group of species, had begun conquering human colonies. Entire systems fell in weeks. Ships were destroyed, cities were bombarded from orbit, and the survivors were either enslaved or left to perish. The United Earth Council, headquartered on the central planet of Solaria, had mobilized every fleet it could muster, but the enemy's technology and tactics were far beyond human understanding. Even the most experienced commanders admitted that they were fighting a losing battle. On Aurora Prime, a small group of humans gathered in the Council Command Hall, a sleek, glass-paneled building overlooking a jagged mountain range. Scientists, engineers, and military leaders huddled around a large holoscreen displaying the progress of the alien invasion. "This is worse than we feared," said Admiral Rhea Carden, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. She was tall, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to scan the room for weakness. "Our fleets are being cut apart before they can even reach the front lines. If we don't get help soon, the outer colonies will be lost." Dr. Elliot Varn, a lead astrophysicist, tapped on a console, bringing up the communications array. "We've tried every standard method, sending messages to neighboring civilizations, broadcasting through subspace channels. Nothing has returned. It's as if we are alone." Admiral Carden's expression hardened. "We can't accept that. Humanity has survived worse. We've thrived in conditions that would have killed other species long ago. We adapt, we survive, we fight back. But this time, we need allies." A hush fell over the room. Every person present understood the risk. Asking for help beyond known space was dangerous. Unknown civilizations might ignore them, or worse. But humanity had no choice. They had to reach out. Dr. Varn continued. "There is one method remaining: deep space transmission. We can send a call to civilizations far beyond known star charts. It's a gamble, but it's the only option left." Commander Talia Nguyen, head of planetary defense, frowned. "We don't know what might respond. We've heard legends of species that thrive in environments humans can barely survive. Deathworlders, hunter cultures, even cannibalistic species. If something like that answers our call, it may not help us at all." Elliot shook his head. "We don't have the luxury of waiting. The enemy is advancing faster than any fleet can intercept. If we do nothing, humanity may fall before we even have a chance to fight." After hours of debate, the Council reached a decision. Aurora Prime would send a message into the far reaches of space. It would be simple: a call for aid, a description of humanity's plight, and proof of their determination to survive. The message would not be begging, it would be a declaration. Humanity was worth saving, and it would not surrender without a fight. The message was prepared. It included holographic data of human achievements, cities on desert worlds, thriving colonies in frozen wastelands, feats of engineering on asteroid belts, and stories of survival against impossible odds. It also contained details of the alien threat, a warning to any civilization that might consider intervening. Humanity needed allies, but they also wanted to show that they could fight alongside anyone who chose to respond. Weeks passed after the transmission was sent. Aurora Prime waited. The silence of space stretched on, vast and unyielding. No reply came. No signs of life beyond known charts reached the planet. Morale began to falter. Children playing in the streets of Aurora's main city asked their parents why no one had come. Soldiers whispered doubts in barracks. Even the council began to wonder if humanity truly was alone. And then, strange readings appeared. Long-range sensors detected ships approaching at impossible speeds, far beyond the capabilities of known human technology. The readings were erratic, wild, almost alive, and they did not match any known species in the interstellar registry. "Admiral, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Joran Kess, a young but skilled officer pointing to the sensor display. The screen showed massive shapes moving through space with terrifying precision. They were large, dark, and armored in ways that made them nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. Carden leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Run identification protocols. Every database, every known species. What are they?" "Nothing matches, Admiral," Joran said, his voice tense. "We've cross-referenced all known civilizations, even the legends. These readings, they resemble the stories of the Deathworlders, but we thought they were myths." A heavy silence filled the room. The Deathworlders were not just dangerous, they were legendary. Tales described their brutal survival on planets that should have been uninhabitable. Worlds of molten rock, acidic oceans, and endless storms. They were apex predators, feared by every civilization they encountered. Humanity had only ever heard rumors of them from scattered logs, old explorers' journals, and tales passed down from one generation of spacefarers to the next. "They're responding to our message," Dr. Varn said, awe in his voice. "The Deathworlders. They are coming." Commander Nguyen's face paled. "We don't know if this is aid or annihilation. They respect strength and courage, but their judgment is alien. We must prepare for anything." As the massive shapes drew closer, Aurora Prime mobilized its defenses. The skies above the colonies filled with human fighters, scanning for any sign of what was coming. Drones patrolled the upper atmosphere, while orbital cannons tracked the incoming ships. Every human citizen was instructed to remain indoors. Fear gripped the planet, but so did curiosity. And then, the ships arrived. They did not descend in a graceful formation like human vessels. They crashed through the atmosphere with roaring engines kicking up storms of dust and debris. The ground shook as massive landing pods struck the surface. From each pod emerged the Deathworlders, towering figures covered in chitinous armor, wielding tools and weapons that seemed alive. Their eyes glowed faintly, scanning everything with intense focus. Admiral Carden stepped forward, flanked by her officers. The Deathworlders paused, observing. There was no aggression at first, only assessment. Humanity held its breath. Finally, a voice echoed, not through speakers, but directly in the minds of the humans. It was deep, resonant, and alien, yet surprisingly clear. "Your call has been heard. Strength must be proven, only then. Aid will come." A murmur ran through the crowd. This was no guarantee of help. The Deathworlders demanded trials, tests of courage, survival, and skill. They would not simply offer assistance. They would make humanity prove itself worthy. Admiral Carden squared her shoulders. "Then we will show them what humans can do. If we survive not just for ourselves, but for every world under threat. Humanity will not bow. Humanity will fight." The council quickly began planning the first trials. Soldiers, engineers, and even civilians were trained for the unknown challenges ahead. The Deathworlders were harsh instructors, testing the limits of every human who stepped forward. They pushed them through obstacle courses in deadly terrain, simulations of extreme environments, and exercises that demanded quick thinking, endurance, and courage. As the first days of training passed, humanity learned something important. The Deathworlders were not mindless killers. They respected intelligence, bravery, and adaptability. They punished weakness, but they also taught those who could survive. Humanity was being tested not just for the sake of survival, but to earn the respect of one of the galaxy's deadliest species. Children in the cities watched from safe observation domes. Soldiers returned exhausted but alive, speaking of lessons learned that no human academy could teach. Engineers marveled at the alien technologies and techniques. Humanity was growing stronger in ways it had never imagined, learning to survive and fight as the Deathworlders did. And yet, a shadow lingered. The alien coalition still advanced, devouring human colonies across the stars. Time was short and the stakes were higher than ever. Humanity had asked the stars for aid, and only the deadliest beings in the galaxy had responded. Now, it was up to humans to rise to the challenge. They would have to prove that their courage, ingenuity, and determination were worthy of the Deathworlders' respect. They would have to survive impossible trials, adapt to alien methods, and prepare to fight the enemies that threatened their entire species. Aurora Prime was no longer just a remote colony. It was the crucible where humanity would be tested. And the stars themselves were watching. Humanity had cried out for help. The Deathworlders had answered, and the future of the human race would be forged in the fires of that choice.